She was not only the daughter of one king but also the wife of another. Unfortunately, both kings used her and manipulated her tenderest feelings to hurt each other. This is the tragic story of the king's daughter who fell deeply in love with a humble shepherd. Michal is the only woman in the entire Bible who is explicitly written about as loving a man, but it only brought her trouble. The story begins when King Saul promises to give his daughter in marriage to the one who defeats the Philistine Goliath. Immediately after her marriage, she faced a struggle to decide whom to support, her father or her husband, David. Her decision to support her husband led to distance between her and her father, as well as her family, but it did not bring her closer to David. David wandered into distant regions and did not visit her, the faithful daughter of the king who had saved him from death. Michal remains in exile, separated from her father and family, watching over and worrying about her husband's travels. As the days and years go by, it becomes clear to Michal that she has not only lost her husband, but her loyalty and devotion did not help her either. Even when David brings her back to his house, she no longer holds the position of ruling queen. She becomes just one of his wives. In the conflict between King Saul and David, there were many who suffered, but one character who suffered more than others was Michal, the daughter of King Saul. Her life became a tragedy as a result of this conflict. The Bible provides limited information about Michal, only mentioning her in the context of Saul and David. Michal's life can be divided into three distinct periods. Period A, Michal marriage to David. Period B, after David's escape. Period C, after Michal returned to David. Michal spent 2 periods in David's house and 1 period in Palti, son of Laish house. The first period. Among the 2 formidable contenders, Saul and David, a small and gentle woman named Michal, who is smart, loyal, and loving, is crushed. She is the daughter of Saul. Michal, the only woman in the Bible who is said to have loved a man, had hoped for a life of happiness and joy when she married David. However, her life was filled with disappointment, sorrow, and suffering. King Saul, her father, was happy when he heard that his daughter Michal loved David and wanted to marry him. But why? Was it because he wanted his little daughter to have a life filled with happiness, peace, and honor? Or was it a ploy to defeat his enemy David with her help? The Bible provides a crystal clear answer. I will give her to him, he thought, so that she may be a snare to him and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. 1 Samuel 18 verse 21. Saul's plan was to have David fall by the hands of the Philistines. 1 Samuel 18 verse 25. If Saul's intention in marrying Michal to David was to overpower him, why did David agree? When the king's servants offered to bring Michal to him, he initially refused. Only when they pleaded with him did he agree. The scripture does not explicitly state why David agreed to marry Michal, but one possible reason could be his hope of becoming Saul's successor. If so, the marriages of Michal and David took place for different reasons. Saul married his daughter Michal with a desire to kill David, while David married Michal with a desire to inherit Saul's kingdom. However, Michal married out of love. Michal finds herself in a situation of double loyalty, torn between her father and her lover, David, who happens to be her father's enemy. It's a difficult choice to make, whom to prefer and whom to trust. However, Michal ultimately chooses David over her father. Once she has chosen her husband, it is important for her to support and help him. She should also be aware that her father is pursuing David with the intention to harm him. Indeed, when David flees from Saul to his house, and Saul sends guards to watch over the house, Michal informs David about it, and she is the one who persuades him to escape immediately. On the day when Saul and David expected to see Michal's loyalty, each on their own side, Michal chose loyalty to her husband over her father. "Why did you deceive me like this and send my enemy away so that he escaped?" 1 Samuel 19 verse 17. In Saul's eyes, the entire purpose of David and Michal's marriage is to plot David's end. However, when the fateful day arrives, Michal disappointed her father, and David is ultimately saved. As a result, Saul is filled with anger towards his daughter for her perceived betrayal. The second period. After David's escape, Michal is left alone in front of her angry father. And this is Saul's reaction to his daughter's betrayal. But Saul had given his daughter Michal, David's wife, to Paltiel son of Laish, who was from Gaulim. 1 Samuel 25 verse 44. As a result of her betrayal of her father, Saul punishes her by banishing her beloved, David, and giving her to another man. However, David eventually regains his wife. Her husband, however, went with her, weeping behind her all the way to Bahurim. 2 Samuel 3 verse 16. Michal is faced with a difficult decision, torn between loyalty to her husband and the love for her father. Ultimately, she chooses loyalty to her husband, but this choice comes with a very severe punishment. Despite her efforts to protect her husband, he cannot return to her. In a cruel twist of fate, her own father betrayed her, banishing her from his presence and assigning Paltiel son of Laish to guard her away from the royal court. Let's stop for a moment. Write us in the comments below why you think David wanted Michal back to him. Let's continue. The third period. After the death of Saul, David became the king of Judah, and Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, became the king of Israel. David's kingdom was strong and stable, while Ishbosheth's kingdom was weak and unstable. Abner, son of Ner, a disgraced army minister, quarreled with the king and made the decision to form an alliance with David, making him the king over all Israel. During the covenant between David and Abner, David made it clear that he wanted Michal, the daughter of Saul, to be returned to him. Abner agreed to this condition, and true to his word, Michal was returned. Why did David insist on having Michal returned to him? After all, he had married other women who bore him sons. What was the significance of Michal, Saul's daughter, in this situation? Even after 9 years since he ran away from home, he has not visited his wife or contacted her. It's surprising considering he was a king in Hebron for 7 years and could have demanded to see his wife or at least ensure her safety. According to the commentators, David brought Michal back to establish his position as the son-in-law of the previous king and to gain acceptance from the people. This was further reinforced by his anointment by the prophet. According to this interpretation, David's motive for returning Michal is not love, but rather for internal propaganda purposes. Previously, when he was only king over the tribe of Judah, Michal was not necessary. After forming an alliance with Abner, the desire to gain acceptance from the people compelled him to return Michal, the king's daughter, to him. While finding an answer to this question may be difficult from the Bible alone, we can gain insight from the fierce conflict that took place during the raising of the Ark of the Covenant. As the Ark of the Covenant is brought to the city of David, David joyfully dances, sings, and rejoices alongside the common people, women, and children. This act provoked the anger of Michal, who was looking out the window. When David returns to bless his home, Michal condemns him for this behavior. And the question arises, Michal, why is she now opposing her husband's uncle, after betraying her father and running away from her husband? For 9 years, David had shown no interest in the well-being of his wife. Throughout this extended period, Michal had the opportunity to reflect on past events, leading her to the realization that she was mistaken in supporting her husband, David, against her father. She discovered that David does not love her and used her for his own needs. Then, perhaps her heart underwent a change and she ceased to love David. This is how this special love fades away. Based on the implied meaning in the verses, it appears that a special relationship developed between Michal and Paltiel son of Laish. When David separates them, it causes Paltiel to cry greatly, and perhaps Michal also feels some reluctance. If this is indeed the case, then taking her to the house of King David was done without her consent. She sought an opportunity to attack David, as she witnessed him disrespecting his honor. She wanted to prove and show him that her father's kingdom was superior. However, she was mistaken in supporting him and betraying her own father. And when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. 2 Samuel 6 verse 16. Michal is grown up with manners and a style of royal, where the king remains distant from the people. In contrast, David is actively engaged with the people, happily dancing and celebrating alongside them. Michal argued to David that his behavior is not befitting of a king. Usually, the Bible does not explicitly describe what is happening in the hearts of its heroes. But here, we are meant to understand their emotions and intentions through their words and actions. However, in this particular case, the Bible does describe a deep contempt. It must have been a profound and intense feeling. She says to David. When David returned home to bless his household, Michal daughter of Saul came out to meet him and said, "How the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going around half-naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants as any vulgar fellow would." 2 Samuel 6 verse 20. But David does not remain indebted. He answers. David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord, who chose me rather than your father." 2 Samuel 6 verse 21. David firmly responds to her, emphasizing that he was chosen instead of her father, who had failed. As a result of this incident, David completely severed his ties with Michal. And that is what the verse said. And Michal daughter of Saul had no children to the day of her death. 2 Samuel 6 verse 23. And thus, the story concludes. She is not David's wife, rather, she is Saul's daughter. Furthermore, she is not a mother to anyone. We hope you learned something new today. If you did, give this video a like and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more informative and entertaining content. See you next time.